Welcome back. Joined by an awesome guest this week. We've got Jack Shore, UFC featherweight, fighting at UFC 301 in Rio. Jack, thank you so much for joining me, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, before I start anything else, I also want to introduce you as Jack Shore, the host of the Tanked Up podcast. I feel like I have to throw that in there as well. So go check out Jack's podcast if you haven't already. Um, So you're fighting at UFC 301. You're going to be fighting in front of a pretty hostile Brazilian crowd. You're fighting Joanderson Brito. Just tell me a little bit before we get into everything else, how you feel about this fight, how you feel about the atmosphere of what that fight's going to be like. Just sort of give me your breakdown.
Yeah, man, I'm very much looking forward to it. I've also had a little bit of time out due to injury.
Yeah.
I'm back now. I'm healthy, and it's a great test for me to come back into. Joe Anderson's on a tier 4 fight finish streak. Real dangerous guy in all areas. So it's a great. A lot of people are calling for him to get a ranked fight. So if I can go in there and beat him, then that puts me right in that position. And my last few fights, my last two of my last 3 fights have been in London. So it's been quite a crowd friendly atmosphere for me. And obviously this one will be quite the opposite. And
Yeah.
it won't be the first time I'm fighting an hometown guy in his hometown. So I'm looking forward to it. I've cornered teammates in Brazil in the past, and it's been very hostile. So I'm looking forward to feeding off that.
Yeah, I mean, they have one of the most passionate MMA fan bases of any country in MMA, I would say. So it should be a lot of fun. Yeah, you mentioned your injury. Just give people an update of what you've been going through over the past year. You haven't fought since I believe UFC 286, if I'm
Yeah, that's
correct.
right.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
been
right.
it's been it's been a while. Just give people an update of what you've been dealing with and sort of like your journey back.
Yeah, so when it actually probably dates back, to be honest, to when I fought Timur Valiev in March of 22. I had like an hand injury in my left hand, and obviously I rested for a little bit after the fight, and it kind of healed itself. And then I had the same sort of issue after the Ricky Simone fight. But obviously, when I fought Ricky, I injured my knee, so obviously that involved having a good 2 months of no contact in training, which sort of led me to believe that the hand was healed as well. And then at the beginning of the camp with Mac one, I felt that my hand kind of go. I didn't even go. I didn't want to go and get an X-ray at the time because I knew if it was broke, the doctors would put me in a cast, and it would mean I wouldn't be able to fight. And that was, a big card like UFC 286 wasn't. I didn't want to miss out, so I kind of just put it in the back of my head, managed to get through the camp and the fight. And I almost knew straight after the fight, to be honest. As soon as the adrenaline wore off, I could feel the base of my arm was in a lot of pain. I couldn't clench my fist. So obviously the UFC are really good. Sent me for X-rays and MRIs, and the MRI sort of discovered that without trying to sound like a wannabe doctor, at the bottom of my arm where my bones connect to my wrist, the cartilage and stuff they had completely worn away. So it was just bone on bone grinding, and that was what was causing the constant inflammation. And my bones were severely bruised. So I went and seen a specialist, and the reason it took so long because I went and seen a specialist, and he was like, "We want to kind of avoid surgery if we can. Are you in a position where you can take like 8 weeks of no contact?" So we tried that. Took the 8 weeks off, felt all right, done one pad session, and felt like we was back to square one. So I had to get my hand fused, which was a case of taking bone out of my pelvis, put it into my wrist, fusing everything together. So it was quite a big op, to be honest. I pretty much went from sort of May last year right up until December without throwing a single punch in my left hand. Minimal grappling and minimal wrestling, but I'm very happy to say that I've put under a lot of pressure this camp, especially early on. I wanted to get straight into training and test it and see how it would feel, banging pads and sparring, and the op has worked. It feels great. So long process. That would have been nice to avoid, but I'm glad I've got it sorted now because it feels like now I'm finally going into a fight without it lingering in the back of my mind of, what am I going to do if my hand blows up in the first round like it has done the last couple. So yeah, it's been a long few months, but I'm glad I'm over it.
Man, that sounds like a lot. That's I mean, especially if somebody like you who's so you're kickboxing based. I mean, like if you can't if you're punching and you're feeling that sort of pressure in your hand, that's like you basically can't even fight. You can't even train. It sounds like what you were dealing with. Um, Well, I'm happy that you're back. I'm glad that you're feeling kind of 100% back to your normal self. I wanted to sort of move on to, because obviously you're pretty much at home at featherweight now, right? You fought Ricky Simone at
Hmm.
bantamweight. Last fight, you also fought Amir Khani, who's now a lightweight. He's no longer with the UFC. How you feeling at featherweight? You feel like pretty much at home there?
Yeah, especially this camp. I feel like the last camp against Mac one, it was my first fight at featherweight. I didn't have a great amount of time. I had about 6 months between my fight with Ricky and my fight with Mac one, so I didn't have a great amount of time to sort of grow into the weight class because I think people are often deceived by how big I am. When my frame for bantamweight was massive, although I'm not like the most chiseled guy in the world. When we run the numbers and I done the DEXA scans and the blood work and stuff, um, I'm a good size featherweight. How I was ever making bantamweight was crazy. And one blessing about obviously having the hand injury was that I could focus on a lot of S&C, a lot of strength work, building power, building speed, putting on a little bit of size. And I feel now that I'm a full blown featherweight now. Do you know what I mean? I feel like
Yeah.
I'll go in there and match size and strength of anybody in the division. Obviously there's gonna be guys at the upper end of the weight class that are a little bit bigger than me, but I think when people see me this fight week, especially like the UFC staff and stuff, I think they'll be surprised at the shape and the size of me now for featherweight compared to the last fight.
Yeah, that's well, you mentioned wanting a ranked fight. So obviously you can't look past your opponent. I know. So I hate asking this question, but like what's a fight that you would envision in terms of getting a ranked fight in the featherweight division when you get through Joanderson?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I'm not sure if a win year puts me into an opposite opportunity for a ranked fight, but I think it definitely puts me on the cusp. You know, I'm aware that although I've done a lot of good work at bantamweight, a win year as big as it would be is still only my second fight in the
Right.
division, and it is a deep division. You look at guys like um just the last couple of weeks, even like Damon Jackson and Hernandez, and those guys are not even ranked at the minute, and they are sort of they're guys who are a good couple of fights into the division. There was Nelson fought Bilaljo and stuff like that. Those guys are not even ranked. I know they've got a lot more steam behind them in the division than I have, but I think it definitely puts me in the mix. A
Yeah.
win year. If it doesn't get me a fight in the rankings, I think it definitely gives me a fight with someone who, like Joe Anderson, is almost on that cusp and is there, knocking around the sort of top 15. So I'd love to think with a win year and another win a couple of months down the line, it puts me in a position to maybe look at those top 15 then going into 2025 perhaps.
Well, I think that the way to do that would probably be a quick little turnaround in fighting at UFC Manchester, which has sort of been rumored to be UFC 304. Is that something that you're interested in? I know it's kind of a quick turnaround, but I mean, I'd imagine that you'd be interested in fighting on that card, right?
I would, man, but I get no luck with these UK summer cards because they always tend to fall on bad dates. You know what I mean? Like it's my son's first birthday, like a couple of days before the
Oh no.
I think it's the 20, is it the 27th that the Manchester event is booked for? It's around about that date because my son's birthday is on the 20th, and obviously it being his first birthday and stuff, it'd kill me to miss it. And I mean, we'll see how this fight goes. Never
Yeah.
say never. We'll see how it goes. If I get a quick finish, I could probably do it, But I think what would it work out? Probably 10 weeks, something like that, if that even. So we'll
Yeah.
see what happens. I'm not gonna shut it down completely, but I know there's cards in Abu Dhabi coming up. There's cards in Paris potentially in September. I mean, I think if I'm going to Brazil to fight the Brazilian, maybe I'm due a European card next, perhaps. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm fully focused on the task ahead. There's no easy fight. There's no walkover. You know what I mean? I know full well the type of fight is going to be and the type of fight I've prepared for. So we'll get Joe Anderson out the way and we'll go from there.
There's also likely going to be a card in Spain for when Topuria defends the belt, so that would be a fun one too.
That would be great.
Yeah, and that would be a good way to get the attention too, with in the featherweight rankings, being that the featherweight title would be there that same night. What do you think about the state of featherweight right now with Topuria as champion? Do you think that Holloway has pretty much like solidified his chance of getting that next shot after knocking out Gaethje? Do you think Volk still deserves the shot? Well, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Holloway kind of holds all the cards because potentially, he's probably the first guy in history who's potentially put himself in a position where you could argue he's number one contender for two divisions at the same time. You could argue he's number one contender at featherweight, but you could also argue I mean, realistically, he's just knocked out Gaethje, who was as good as the number one contender. That's now put him in a position to fight for the belt next. I know people are talking about Arman going up and fighting for the belt, but I mean, if they announce tomorrow that Poirier's out and Holloway's in, no one would argue the case, would they? So it's a real exciting time. I mean, personally, I'd like to see Volk get a rematch because of what he did as a champion and how long he reigned for and how dominant he was. But you know, Poirier did Topuria did put him away in pretty dominant fashion. So I'd be interested to see where they go with. But the division's always been stacked. I mean, now more than ever, it feels like not only have you got the top 15, but like I just talked about, you've got so many good guys on the cusp as well. I mean, like the week after me, you got Barboza and Lerone Murphy fighting in the main event. You got guys like Diego Lopez who are on a tear. You know, guys like Bruce Leroy and Bryce Mitchell and all, and they're always, you know, in exciting fights, and always big traction comes when those guys are fighting. So it's a fun time to be involved. And like I said, you know, I'm not looking to hang about. I want to kind of put myself on the car. The car lights have just gone off. I'm looking to put myself sort of in the mix with those type of names. But you know, I got a bit of work to do. But in terms of depth, the division is stacked at the minute.
Yeah, really quick. I know I don't want to harp too much on other people's fights, but just out of curiosity, you know, people thought that Topuria looked a little scared when Holloway called him out after knocking out Gaethje, and then obviously the internet starts saying, oh, that Holloway is going to put Topuria away if they fight. How do you see that fight going if they do fight?
Yeah, I don't know if scared is the right term, to be fair. I mean, he just fought the pound for pound, or a guy who was being called pound for pound #1 about 8 months ago. So,
yeah.
I mean, style make fight. It's funny because styles make fights, because you look at how dominant Volk looked against Holloway in the third fight. But I think stylistically, Max is probably a tougher matchup for Topuria than what Volk is, just because of his size, his length, his boxing range. But you know, all fights at that top level, especially in the little gloves, it's a case of it takes one shot or one little trap, you know, zigging when you should have zagged, as GSP always says, and it can switch everything around. But I mean, it's hard to kind of to root against Holloway after the weekend, isn't it? It's hard to pick anyone other than him. But then, you know, I think with MMA, it's a case of recency bias a lot of the time, because just because of how good Holloway's knockout is, we kind of forget of how dominant Topuria's knockout over Volk was. I mean, for me, if that's the fight to make. I mean, like I said, I'd like to see Volk at the rematch, but if he's not available and he wants a bit more time off, now's the time to make that fight, because I think it'd be absolutely massive. They're talking about doing a stadium in Spain. I feel like that's the fight that's going to sell you 80,000 tickets after the weekend is Topuria and Holloway. Topuria is a massive star in Spain and Europe, and I feel like after the weekend, the amount of eyes that was on UFC 300, and for Holloway to do that, no, he wasn't a star anyway, but I think that's kind of taking him from a big star to a superstar, to a kind of a McGregor-esque type of superstar. So that's the one to do, I think, if they want to sell out the Real Madrid stadium.
That's a really good point. I actually 100% agree with that. Okay, I'm going to let you go here, but I know you're a big boxing fan, so I wanted to get your take on the big fight over the weekend, Garcia versus Devin Haney. What did you think of it? And was Ryan Garcia's whole spiel, was that a big act, or do you think that he was serious? What do you think about all that?
I put it on my Facebook because I'm kind of off social media at the minute, just to focus on the fight, because I spend way too much time scrolling and stuff. But I actually logged into Facebook Sunday morning to try and find like an highlight video, because I missed the fight obviously because it was early hours, and I found it. I feel like it was the greatest troll job in the history of mankind. I feel like Garcia kind of just trolled us all. He had us believing that he wasn't taking the fight serious, that, you know, he missed weight. He had us believing that he didn't prepare. And then, because I mean, if you had asked me Friday or Saturday morning, who do I think? I got to bet my mortgage on someone, I would have betted on Devin Haney without a doubt. I thought Devin Haney was going to go in there, outclass him. I generally didn't see Garcia landing a punch, and then I just feel like he didn't. I watched the full fight, but I just feel like he didn't recover from that first round.
Right.
I think every time, although Haney did do good work, I just feel like every time he was on the inside, he was so cautious of what was coming back at him, because he was so rocked in the first round, and then when he hit him down in the seventh, you know, it's crazy. I do genuinely feel like Garcia was a little bit unhinged, but I think he's a very, very good market, and he's a very, very good. You know, he knows what sells tickets. I spoke to my boxing coach, Gary Lockett, Friday about it, and he said, let me tell you, like, this kid knows what moves the needle. He's one of the biggest stars in boxing. And I seen today that he bet $2 million on himself and ended up coming away with 12 million. So maybe it was the grand plan all along. You know what I
Right.
mean? I mean, I couldn't have called it. I don't think many of the experts would have called it either. But Garcia, without the rehydration clause that he had against Tank, now he's gone up the weight class. He looked very, very strong. I know he missed weight, which was obviously is a little bit of a shadow cast over it, but he looked
Yeah.
strong, he looked powerful, he looked fast. And I mean, I think a lot of it could probably come down to Haney, maybe not taking him as serious as he should have. Perhaps that was the plan. Lure him into thinking it's going to be an easy night's work and then go in there and kind of surprise him. And if that was the plan, it worked a treat because he sold me down the river and I think he sold everyone else down the river as well. It'd be interesting to see what fight they make next, whether they get the rematch or, it'd be nice to see a rematch so he can have a crack at the title. Obviously, he missed weight and didn't get the belt, but who knows what happens next? I mean, Garcia's obviously not shy of cash. He's on one a little bit at the minute, and he's out in everybody online and out in Hollywood and all these celebrities. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But I know for a fact, Haney's got like that Mayweather mentality. He'll be clucking for the rematch, and I'd be very surprised if that's what we do. And the second fight would be even bigger again now because of how the first fight went. So, I hope they do a rematch, but if they don't, good on Garcia. He proved all the Facebook and the Instagram experts wrong, put it that way.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I'll send you a DM because I actually said the same thing. I made an Instagram reaction video immediately after the fight, and I said, this is the greatest troll job in history. Like, he trolled everybody. I'll send it to you. I said the exact same thing. Jack, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I've had a blast talking to you. Last question, we're here. It's April 22nd, 2024. Where do we see you, Jack Shore, on April 22nd, 2025?
I like to think you will see me with another 2-3 wins under my belt. And if I'm not in the rankings, hopefully I'll be preparing at the time for a fight to get me that number next to my name for the second time. I got ranked at bantamweight. If I can get ranked at featherweight, I think I'll be the first Welsh guy to ever get ranked in 2 divisions in the UFC. And that'll be something to look back on in years to come. And obviously not just that, it'll help push me and propel me to bigger and better fights as well.
Love it. I'll be rooting for you, man. Jack Shore versus Joanderson Brito, UFC 301 in Rio. Or it's Rio, right? Did I just get that wrong?
Yeah. It's Rio.
Okay,
Rio.
okay. Yeah, in Rio. Best of luck, man. Go get it.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate your time, and I'll catch you soon.
All right, man. Sounds good.